The Galactic Military Academy of Thandros Prime had stood for 3,000 cycles. Its obsidian walls had witnessed the training of generals who conquered star systems, admirals who commanded fleets numbering in the thousands, and tacticians whose strategies were still studied across 42 galaxies. And in all those millennia, never once had its hallowed lecture halls fallen silent the way they did on the day General Vok issued his challenge. I was there, third row, second seat from the left, my data tablet hovering before me as I took notes on interspecies combat doctrine. My name is Reth, and I am a Krell. We are known throughout the galaxy for our exceptional memory, our 4 arms that allow us to multitask with frightening efficiency, and our complete inability to understand human behavior. That last part, I would learn, was a significant problem. The lecture hall could accommodate 200 students. That morning, it held 197. The diversity was stunning, really. Methane breathers in their containment suits sat beside silicon-based Korath. The insectoid Vresh clicked their mandibles while reviewing tactical displays. Even a pair of Zenthari, those floating jellyfish creatures that communicate through bioluminescence, pulsed softly in the back corner. And then there were the humans. 3 of them. Just 3, out of nearly 200 students. Marcus Webb sat in the front row, his military bearing evident even in his posture. He had the look of someone who had seen combat. Probably in one of those endless border skirmishes humans seemed to throw themselves into with disturbing regularity. The second human, a male named Diego Vasquez, occupied a seat near the middle. He was massive by human standards, built like what they call a linebacker, though I still have no idea what that actually means. Something about their primitive ball games, I think. And then there was Kira Tanaka. She sat alone, 3 rows behind me. Small, even by human standards. Her dark hair was pulled back in what humans call a ponytail. Her uniform was perfectly pressed, every crease sharp enough to cut atmosphere. But it was her eyes that I remember most. Dark, focused, and utterly calm. The kind of calm that makes you nervous precisely because it suggests someone who has seen things that would break most beings. I had spoken to her exactly twice before that day. Once to ask if she could pass me a stylus I had dropped. She had smiled, said sure, and handed it to me with the kind of casual grace that suggested she was not even remotely aware that my species found the human ability to balance on 2 legs both fascinating and slightly horrifying. The second time, I asked her opinion on the siege of Kelmar 7. She had looked at me with those steady eyes and said, quote, "They forgot that walls work both ways," end quote. Then she had returned to her notes. I had spent the next 3 hours trying to parse what she meant. General Vok entered, at exactly 9th bell. He was Thandorian, which meant he stood nearly 3 meters tall, had skin like polished granite, and possessed the kind of voice that could strip paint from a bulkhead at 20 paces. 4 eyes, arranged in a diamond pattern on his face, surveyed the room with the kind of disdain that only comes from commanding fleets in actual combat while watching academy students fumble through simulations. "Tactical flexibility," he began, his voice echoing off the walls like thunder in a canyon. "The capacity to adapt, to overcome, to survive when every simulation, every probability matrix, every tactical computer tells you that survival is impossible." He began pacing, his massive feet creating rhythmic thuds that punctuated his words. "This is what separates the living from the dead, the victorious from the forgotten, the competent from the corpses drifting in the void." I scribbled notes furiously. 2 of my hands wrote, while the other two managed my tablet and a secondary reference screen. Around me, students of 24 species did the same. Consider the Battle of the Shattered Moon, Vok continued. 12 Vrithian cruisers against a Zenthari dreadnought. The mathematics suggested a 97% probability of Vrethian defeat. Conventional tactics would have been suicide. So what did Commander Thex do? He paused, letting the question hang in the air like a guillotine blade. A Vrethian student near the front raised 3 of her 6 arms. She abandoned conventional tactics, General, used the moon's debris field to mask their approach, then concentrated all fire on the dreadnought's sensor array, blinding it while they repositioned. Correct, Vok said, and I could have sworn I saw something like approval flicker across his face. She recognized that the game was rigged, so she changed the game. That is tactical flexibility. He pulled up a holographic display. Battle scenarios began rotating above his head, showing various engagements from the past 500 cycles. Flanking maneuvers, pincer movements, fighting retreats that turned into ambushes. Now, he said, and his voice dropped into a register that made my spine ridges tingle with unease. Let us discuss species that lack this quality. Species that, despite their technological achievements, remain fundamentally predictable, rigid, locked into patterns that any competent tactician can exploit. He smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Humans. The word dropped into the silence like a stone into still water. I saw Marcus stiffen slightly in the front row. Diego's jaw tightened. And Kira? Kira simply continued taking notes, her stylus moving across her tablet with the same measured pace as before. Humans, Vok repeated, warming to his subject now, are perhaps the most peculiar case study in galactic military history. A species that has survived approximately 100 planetary conflicts, dozens of civil wars, 2 near-extinction events, and countless smaller engagements, and yet, when one examines their tactical doctrine, a pattern emerges. A pattern so consistent, so predictable, that it borders on the absurd. He manipulated the holographic display. New images appeared. Human soldiers in various historical periods, ancient warriors with metal blades, soldiers with chemical propellant weapons, modern troops in powered armor. They charge, Vok said simply. When presented with a threat, the human response, across cultures, across time periods, across technological levels, is fundamentally identical. They locate the threat, they assess the threat, and then they run directly at it, screaming. A few students laughed. Not many, but enough. I saw Diego's hands curl into fists. Marcus's face had gone carefully blank. And Kira? Still taking notes. Her expression had not changed even slightly. Oh, they dress it up in fancy terminology, Vok continued, clearly enjoying himself now. Aggressive forward defense, rapid assault doctrine, dynamic engagement protocol. But strip away the jargon, and what remains? Primates with advanced weapons doing what their ancestors did when faced with a predator. Throw rocks and hope for the best. More laughter now. Even some of the Vresh were clicking their mandibles in amusement. Their military history is a litany of the same tactic, repeated endlessly, Vok said. He pulled up more images, beaches, fortifications, urban combat zones. Normandy, they charged. Stalingrad, they charged. The Hadley's Hope incident. What did the colonial marines do when faced with xenomorph infestation? They charged. I should mention at this point that the Hadley's Hope incident was actually a fictional event from human entertainment media. But General Vok either did not know this or did not care. In retrospect, this should have been my first warning that he was operating from a position of incomplete intelligence. The human tactical doctrine, Vok declared, can be summarized in 3 words: point, shoot, charge. It is the military philosophy of a species that has more aggression than sense, more momentum than strategy, and more luck than any species has a right to possess. He turned to face the class directly now, all 4 eyes scanning the room. But luck runs out. And when it does, all the screaming and charging in the universe will not save you from a superior tactical mind. That was when he saw Kira. I do not know what made him focus on her specifically. Perhaps it was the fact that she was still calmly taking notes while the other 2 humans looked like they were contemplating violence. Perhaps it was simple bad luck. Or perhaps, and I think this is most likely, he was the kind of commander who believed that breaking a student's spirit early would make them a better soldier later. Whatever the reason, he pointed one massive finger directly at her. "You," he said, "human female. 3rd row. What is your name?" Kira looked up from her tablet. Her expression was polite, attentive, and completely unreadable. "Cadet Kira Tanaka, sir." "Cadet Tanaka," Vok said, and I could hear the satisfaction in his voice. He had found his target. "You have been sitting there, taking notes throughout my lecture. Tell me, do you disagree with my assessment of human tactical doctrine?" Every being in that room was watching now. The Vresh had stopped clicking. The Zenthari had dimmed their bioluminescence. Even the methane breathers had gone silent in their suits. Kira set down her stylus with careful precision. "Permission to speak freely, sir?" "Granted." "Yes, sir. I disagree." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. General Vok's smile widened. "Fascinating. Please, Cadet Tanaka, enlighten us. Explain how I, a general with 400 cycles of combat experience, am wrong about the species I have studied for the past decade." Kira stood, slowly, smoothly, with that same measured control she had displayed since the moment I met her. She was, I realized, the calmest person in the entire room, including, possibly, the general. "You are not wrong about human tactics, sir," she said clearly. "You are wrong about why we use them." Vok's smile faltered, just for a moment, just for a fraction of a second. But I saw it. "Explain." "You characterize human forward assault doctrine as predictable aggression. You suggest it is a primitive holdover from our evolutionary past. You are correct that we charge. You are incorrect about why." She walked out into the aisle, hands clasped behind her back, addressing the room as if she were giving the lecture now. "Humans charge because we have learned, through 10,000 years of warfare on one of the most hostile planets in the known galaxy, that hesitation kills faster than action. We charge because we have discovered that momentum, properly applied, breaks defensive lines that static tactics cannot penetrate. We charge because we understand something that many species seem to have forgotten." She paused. The room was absolutely silent. The psychological impact of an enemy that refuses to stop. Vok's eyes narrowed, all 4 of them. "You are suggesting that human tactical doctrine is based on psychological warfare?" "Not based on, sir. Built around it. Every human soldier understands that we are, by galactic standards, physically inferior. We are not as strong as Thandorians. We are not as fast as Vresh. We lack the environmental adaptability of Zenthari or the multitasking capability of Krell." She glanced at me briefly. I felt my spine ridges flush with embarrassment. "What we have," she continued, "is the capacity to continue operating long past the point where any rational being would surrender or retreat, and we have learned to weaponize that capacity." General Vok crossed his arms. The movement was slow, deliberate. I had seen enough human body language training to recognize what they call a power stance. An interesting theory, Cadet, but theory and practice are different things. In actual combat, your psychological warfare means nothing if you are dead. Agreed, sir. And yet you maintain that human tactics are effective? I maintain that human tactics have kept us alive on a planet where 90% of the large fauna can kill us, where weather patterns regularly produce winds that can strip flesh from bone, where our own bodies will die if the temperature shifts 20 degrees in either direction, and where our primary natural weapons are persistence and the ability to throw things accurately. Vok laughed. It was a booming sound that echoed off the walls. Persistence. Throwing things. This is your defense of human military doctrine? No, sir. This is the foundation of human military doctrine. Everything else is just application. The general's expression shifted. I could not quite read it. Amusement? Annoyance? Calculation? Very well, Cadet Tanaka. I am going to make you an offer. Consider it an educational opportunity. Oh no. I knew that tone. Every student in the academy knew that tone. It was the tone instructors used right before they made an example of someone. I am issuing a challenge. You, Cadet Tanaka, will face an opponent of my choosing in simulated combat. Individual engagement, standard academy parameters. If you can demonstrate this vaunted human tactical flexibility, this psychological warfare doctrine you are so proud of, I will publicly concede that I have underestimated human military capability. He leaned forward, and his smile was absolutely predatory. But when you lose, when you discover that charging and screaming is not sufficient against a trained opponent with actual tactical sophistication, you will stand before this class and admit that human military doctrine is, as I have stated, predictable, primitive, and fundamentally flawed. Do you accept? Every student was staring at Kira now. Marcus looked like he wanted to intervene. Diego was half out of his seat. And me? I was frantically calculating the odds of her survival in whatever nightmare scenario Vok was planning. Kira was silent for exactly 3 seconds. Then she smiled. It was a small smile. Barely there, but I saw it. Yes, sir, I accept, under one condition. Vok's eyes widened slightly. Clearly, he had not expected a counteroffer. And what condition would that be, Cadet? Her smile widened, just a fraction. You choose the opponent, but I choose the battlefield. The general stared at her. For 5 full seconds, he just stared. Then he began to laugh again. This time, it sounded different. Less mocking. More interested. Agreed. I will select your opponent by next class session. You will have 48 hours to specify your battlefield parameters within Academy regulations. Are we clear? Crystal clear, sir. Excellent. Class dismissed. The room erupted into motion. Students grabbed their gear and headed for the exits, already discussing what they had just witnessed in a dozen different languages and communication methods. I sat frozen in my seat, my tablet still hovering before me, watching as Kira calmly collected her things. Marcus reached her first, moving through the crowd with practiced ease. Kira, what the hell are you doing? My job, Marcus, same as you. Your job is to learn tactics, not to get humiliated by a general in front of the entire academy. Diego joined them, looming over both smaller humans. She knows what she is doing, Webb. Back off. Do you know what you are doing? Marcus asked, ignoring Diego and focusing entirely on Kira. Vok is going to pick someone impossible. Someone who has been training since before you were born. Someone who can... I know, Kira said quietly. That is what I am counting on. And with that completely cryptic statement, she walked out of the lecture hall, leaving Marcus and Diego staring after her, leaving me completely confused, and leaving General Vok standing at the front of the room, watching her go with an expression I could not read. That night, the entire academy was buzzing with speculation. Who would Vok choose? What battlefield would Kira select? How badly was this going to end? I tried to focus on my coursework. I really did. But I kept thinking about that smile. That small, barely there smile when she accepted the challenge. Humans, I decided, were either the bravest species in the galaxy or the most suicidal. Possibly both. 48 hours to specify battlefield parameters. 48 hours until General Vok revealed his choice of opponent. And somewhere in the academy, a human cadet who was barely 5.5 feet tall was planning something that would either prove her point or destroy her career before it even began. I made a note in my journal that night. Quote, "Today, I watched a human accept an impossible challenge from a general with 4 centuries of combat experience." She smiled. "I do not understand humans." End quote. In retrospect, I really should have known better. The next 48 hours were, without question, the strangest period of my academic career. The entire academy had become obsessed with the upcoming simulation. Betting pools appeared in every dormitory commons. Analysis groups formed to discuss potential scenarios. Even the instructors were talking about it in hushed tones between classes. And Kira? Kira spent the entire time in the academy library, reviewing old simulation records. I know this because I followed her. Not in a creepy way, mind you. I was simply curious and concerned. Mostly curious, perhaps 30% concerned. All right, 50-50. She sat at a corner terminal for hours, scrolling through combat simulations dating back decades, not watching them play out, just reviewing the parameters, the environmental variables, the victory conditions. Her stylus moved constantly across her tablet, taking notes in that precise handwriting that somehow made even tactical analysis look elegant. Marcus tried to approach her twice. Both times, she politely but firmly told him she needed to concentrate. Diego brought her food, which she accepted with a grateful smile but barely touched. The Zenthari students pulsed questions at her in bioluminescent patterns. She waved politely but kept working. At hour 36, she submitted her battlefield parameters to General Vok. The specifications were locked under Academy security protocols, which meant nobody except Kira, Vok, and the simulation technicians knew what she had chosen. This did not stop every student from trying to guess. The Vresh thought she would pick an environment favorable to human biology. Temperate climate, Earth-standard gravity, plenty of oxygen. Play to her species' strengths. The Korath suggested she would choose an urban environment. Lots of cover, limited sight lines, opportunities for ambush. Classic infantry tactics. The other Krell and I debated whether she might select a scenario with complex objectives. Something that required multitasking and rapid decision-making. Force her opponent to divide their attention. We were all wrong. Spectacularly, hilariously wrong. But we would not discover that until the simulation began. At hour 47, General Vok announced his choice of opponent. He did it during morning formation, standing before the entire cadet corps with that same predatory smile. Cadet Tanaka has submitted her battlefield parameters. They have been reviewed and approved. The simulation will take place this afternoon at 14th Bell in Combat Simulation Chamber 7. All cadets are invited to observe. He paused, letting the anticipation build. As for Cadet Tanaka's opponent, I have selected someone who embodies everything I described in my lecture. Experience, tactical sophistication, the capacity to adapt and overcome. Someone who has proven themselves in actual combat, not just academy exercises. Another pause. The silence was suffocating. Combat Instructor Thrace, formerly Major Thrace of the Vrethian Expeditionary Corps. 42 years of service, 317 confirmed engagements, winner of the last 4 tactical excellence competitions, specialist in adaptive warfare and opponent psychology. My stomach, all 3 of them, dropped simultaneously. Thrace. He had chosen Thrace. For those unfamiliar with Vrethian physiology, allow me to explain. Vrethians have 6 arms, compound eyes that provide nearly 360 degrees of vision, reflexes approximately 3 times faster than human standard, and most critically, they possess a neural structure that allows them to process multiple tactical scenarios simultaneously. Where a human sees one option, a Vrethian sees 6. Where a human makes one decision, a Vrethian has already evaluated alternatives and counter-alternatives. Thrace was not just any Vrethian, she was a legend. Her tactics were studied in advanced courses. Her engagement records were used as teaching tools. And now she was going to face a human cadet who had been in the academy for less than 2 cycles. It was not a fight. It was an execution. I looked for Kira in the formation, found her standing at attention 3 rows back. Her face was calm, completely, utterly calm. Like Vok had announced a routine training exercise instead of her public humiliation. Marcus, standing 2 positions to her left, looked like he wanted to murder someone. Probably General Vok, possibly the entire chain of command. Diego, behind her, had his jaw clenched so tight I worried his teeth might crack. Humans, I had learned, did that when they were angry, but could not act on it. The simulation begins at 14th bell, Vok repeated. Dismissed. The formation broke. Immediately, students swarmed around Kira, asking questions, offering advice, expressing sympathy that sounded more like they were planning her funeral. She smiled, thanked them, and politely extracted herself from the crowd. I caught up with her outside the dormitory complex. My 4 arms allowed me to carry both our gear, which gave me an excuse to walk with her. Kira, I said carefully, are you, and I apologize if this is too forward, completely insane? She laughed. Actually laughed. It was a quiet sound, but genuine. Probably, Reth, but it is a bit late to back out now. Thrace has 6 arms. You have 2. Thrace has compound vision. You have, respectfully, front-facing eyes with extremely limited peripheral awareness. Thrace can process tactical scenarios at speeds that make our neural networks look primitive. You have, again respectfully, a brain designed to avoid being eaten by large cats on a single planet. All true, Kira agreed pleasantly. We walked through the courtyard, past the memorial statues of famous graduates, past the fountain that supposedly brought luck if you tossed in a credit chip, though I had never seen evidence of this. So, what is your plan? Because from my analysis, which I have run approximately 40 times since last night, you have a 3% chance of victory. And that is being generous. 2 of those percentage points come from the possibility that Instructor Thrace might have a medical emergency mid-simulation. Kira stopped walking, turned to face me. Those dark eyes were serious now, focused. Reth, can I tell you something? Human to Krell? Of course. General Vok made one critical mistake in his lecture, one error that undermines his entire analysis of human tactics. And that is? She smiled again. That small, dangerous smile. He assumed we charge because we are too stupid to do anything else. He never considered that we might charge because we know something he does not. Which is that every plan, no matter how sophisticated, no matter how well calculated, falls apart the moment someone punches you in the face. With that, she collected her gear from my arms, thanked me politely, and headed inside, leaving me standing in the courtyard, trying to parse whether that was tactical philosophy or just human stubbornness talking. At 14th bell, Combat Simulation Chamber 7 was packed. The observation deck held maybe 60 people comfortably. There were at least 200 students crammed into every available space. Some were hanging from support beams. The Zenthari had formed a floating cluster near the ceiling. Even some instructors had shown up, standing in the back, with expressions ranging from morbid curiosity to outright concern. General Vok stood at the primary observation console, manipulating holographic controls with practiced ease. Beside him, looking entirely too pleased with herself, was Instructor Thrace. She was smaller than I expected, only about 4 feet tall, which was short even by Vrethian standards. But she moved with a fluid grace that suggested every one of those 6 arms knew exactly what they were doing. Her compound eyes reflected the holographic displays in thousands of tiny facets. She wore standard simulation gear, but somehow made it look like formal military dress. Parameters confirmed, Vok announced to the room. Standard individual combat simulation. Victory conditions are simple. Incapacitate your opponent. Standard safety protocols apply. All damage is simulated. Injury feedback is capped at level 3. Medical override is active. He manipulated the controls. The central holographic display shifted, showing the interior of the simulation chamber. It was a massive space, easily 100 meters to a side, with holographic projectors capable of creating any environment imaginable. Cadet Tanaka has chosen her battlefield. Instructor Thrace will have 30 seconds to review the environment before engagement begins. Cadet Tanaka, Instructor Thrace, please enter the chamber. 2 doors opened on opposite sides of the observation deck. Thrace descended the stairs with confident, measured steps. All 6 arms swung in synchronized patterns that probably meant something in Vrethian body language. Kira walked down from the other side. She had changed into lightweight simulation armor. Nothing fancy. Standard cadet issue. Her hair was still pulled back in that ponytail. Her face was still calm. She looked, if anything, slightly bored. They entered the chamber through separate airlocks, took positions at opposite ends of the space. The holographic projectors hummed to life. And that was when I understood what Kira had done. The environment materialized around them. Not a jungle, not an urban sprawl, not a space station or a trench system or any of the standard tactical scenarios. An empty room, perfectly square, 50 meters to a side, smooth floor, smooth walls, absolutely no cover, no obstacles, no environmental variables, no tactical complexity whatsoever. Just 2 combatants in an empty box. The observation deck erupted into confused murmuring. I heard someone behind me say, quote, "That is it? Just a room?" End quote. Instructor Thrace tilted her, head, compound eyes scanning the environment. Even from the observation deck, I could see her calculating, analyzing, processing the implications. General Vok's expression was unreadable. He keyed the communications system. Instructor Thrace, you have 30 seconds to review the battlefield parameters. Use them wisely. Thrace spent exactly 15 seconds turning in a slow circle, examining every surface. Then she stopped, faced Kira across the empty space, and made a gesture with 2 of her arms that I am fairly certain was the Vrethian equivalent of a respectful nod. "Clever," she said. Her voice echoed in the chamber, picked up by the simulation audio feeds. You have removed all tactical variables except the ones that cannot be changed. Physiology, training, reflexes. Kira said nothing, just stood there, hands at her sides, waiting. You have forced this to be about pure combat capability, Thrace continued. No ambushes, no environmental advantages, just you and me. You realize this benefits me, yes? In a contest of pure physical capability, I have 6 arms to your 2, enhanced reflexes, superior visual range. Kira smiled, that same small smile. I know. Thrace's head tilted further. It was the Vrethian equivalent of a frown. Confusion. Then why? Because, Kira interrupted gently, you are about to learn the difference between fighting someone who uses tactics and fighting someone who is themselves a tactic. The timer reached 0. General Vox's voice boomed through the chamber. Simulation begins. Now. For exactly 2 seconds, neither combatant moved. They stood there, 50 meters apart, just watching each other. Thrace in her ready stance, all 6 arms positioned for optimal response time. Kira standing casual, relaxed, like she was waiting for a transport. Then Kira started walking. Not running, not charging, just walking. Steady, measured steps directly toward Thrace. No evasive movement, no tactical positioning, just a straight line. Thrace made the first move. 3 of her arms snapped forward, launching holographic projectiles. Standard simulation weapons, stun rounds. Non-lethal, but effective. Her targeting was perfect. All 3 rounds aimed at center mass, spaced to account for any direction Kira might dodge. Kira did not dodge. She tilted her body exactly 11 degrees to the left. The first round missed by centimeters, shifted her weight onto her right foot, and pivoted. The second round passed through the space where her torso had been a fraction of a second earlier, dropped into a crouch that looked more like she was picking something up than evading. The third round sailed overhead, and she never stopped walking forward. Thrace's compound eyes widened. Probably surprise, possibly respect. She fired again. 6 rounds this time, using all her arms. Different angles, different trajectories, coordinated to leave no escape route. Kira wove through them like water flowing through rocks. Her movements were minimal, efficient. Each shift of weight, each turn of her shoulders, each slight adjustment of her position was precisely calibrated to avoid incoming fire by the smallest margin possible. She looked like she was dancing, a slow, deliberate dance where the music was made of tactical trajectories and threat assessment. And she never stopped walking forward. The observation deck had gone completely silent. Even the Zenthari had stopped pulsing. Everyone was watching this human cadet walk calmly toward a combat instructor who was throwing everything she had at her. Thrace switched tactics. She started moving, using her superior speed to circle, to create angles, to force Kira to split her attention. She fired in bursts now, unpredictable patterns, changing positions between each volley. Kira just kept walking, not toward where Thrace was, toward where Thrace was going to be. She tracked the instructor's movement with those front-facing eyes, made micro-adjustments to her path, and maintained that same steady, unhurried pace. 30 meters, 25, 20. I realized what Kira was doing. She was not fighting Thrace's tactics. She was making Thrace's tactics irrelevant. Every strategy, every maneuver, every calculated approach Thrace attempted was rendered meaningless because Kira was not playing the game Thrace expected. She was not trying to outmaneuver a superior opponent. She was not attempting to use cover that did not exist. She was not doing anything except walking forward. And that simple action, that refusal to engage on tactical terms, was breaking Thrace's advantage. Because every second Kira spent walking forward was a second Thrace spent trying to stop her. And nothing was working. 15 meters. 10. Thrace stopped moving. Planted herself. All 6 arms came up in a defensive stance that any Vrethian instructor would have praised as textbook perfect. She waited for Kira to close the distance, waited for the attack that had to come. Because at close range, Kira would have to engage, would have to try something, and that was when Thrace's superior reflexes and 6-armed advantage would end this. 5 meters. 3. Kira stopped walking. For the first time since the simulation began, she actually stopped, stood there just outside Thrace's reach, and smiled. "Permission to speak, instructor?" Thrace's arms remained up, ready. Her compound eyes tracked every movement, every muscle twitch, but her voice was steady. "Granted." "You are fighting me like I am trying to win," Kira said. "That is your mistake." "Explain." "Humans do not charge because we think we will win. We charge because we have learned that making the other side think about stopping us is more valuable than actually stopping us." Then she moved, not a tactical advance, not a calculated strike. She just stepped forward, grabbed 2 of Thrace's arms with her hands, and headbutted the instructor directly in the center of her compound eyes. The observation deck erupted in chaos. Students were shouting. Instructors were making shocked noises in various languages. Even General Vok looked stunned. Headbutting was not a standard combat technique. It was not taught in any tactical manual. It was exactly the kind of unsophisticated, brutish caveman nonsense that Vok had mocked in his lecture. It was also incredibly effective. Thrace stumbled backward, her visual processing disrupted by the impact. Her remaining 4 arms came up defensively. But Kira was already inside her guard, moving with that same calm efficiency. She did not try to match Thrace's speed, did not attempt complex martial arts. She just grabbed, pushed, pulled, and struck with brutal simplicity. Thrace recovered quickly, started to bring her tactical training to bear, started to use her superior reflexes and additional limbs to create distance, to reset the engagement. Kira did not let her. Every time Thrace tried to step back, Kira stepped forward. Every time Thrace tried to establish a defensive position, Kira closed the distance again. She was not fighting Thrace. She was becoming a problem that Thrace could not solve, because the solution to someone walking toward you is to make them stop walking. And Kira simply would not stop. 30 seconds. 45. 1 minute. The fight devolved into something that looked less like a tactical engagement and more like someone trying to get a particularly stubborn door to stay closed. Thrace would establish a position. Kira would walk through it. Thrace would create distance. Kira would close it. Again and again and again. And slowly, incrementally, Thrace's movements became less precise. Her arms stopped moving in perfect coordination. Her positioning became reactive instead of proactive. She was not being outfought. She was being exhausted, worn down by someone who simply refused to acknowledge that they should be losing. At 2 minutes and 17 seconds, Kira grabbed one of Thrace's arms, used it as leverage to spin the instructor around, and put her in what humans call a chokehold, which is apparently exactly what it sounds like. A hold that restricts breathing. Thrace tapped out, the universal signal for surrender. The simulation ended. The holographic environment disappeared. The chamber lights came up. Kira released Thrace immediately, stepped back, and extended her hand. the human gesture of respect. Thrace, breathing heavily, looked at the offered hand for a long moment. Then she reached out with one arm and grasped it, shook it once. "That," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the audio feeds, "was the most frustrating 2 minutes of my military career." Kira smiled. "Thank you, instructor. I threw everything at you, every tactic I know, and you just kept walking." "Yes, ma'am." "Why?" Kira's smile widened just slightly. "Because you were so busy trying to stop me, you forgot to actually stop me." Thrace stared at her. Then, incredibly, she began to laugh. It was a clicking, chittering sound that rippled through all 6 of her limbs. "I need to review this recording. Immediately. I want to see exactly where my tactical approach failed." "Your tactical approach did not fail, instructor. I just never engaged with it." They walked toward the exit together, Thrace already analyzing the engagement, Kira answering questions with that same patient calm she had shown throughout. The door opened. They stepped through. And that left General Vok standing at the observation console, staring at the empty simulation chamber with an expression I will remember until my last cycle. Shock, confusion, and perhaps the smallest hint of respect. He keyed the communication system. His voice, when it came, lacked all of its earlier confidence. "Class dismissed." Nobody moved. We were all still processing what we had just witnessed. Vok turned to face the observation deck. All 4 eyes found me, for some reason. Perhaps because I was closest. Perhaps because he needed to say this to someone. "I was wrong," he said quietly. Then, louder, "I was wrong." He manipulated the controls. The central display showed a replay of the fight. Showed Kira walking forward. Showed Thrace's increasingly desperate attempts to stop her. Showed the moment when tactical sophistication meant nothing because it was being applied to a problem that did not care about tactics. "Human military doctrine," Vok said slowly, as if working through a complex equation, "is not unsophisticated. It is anti-sophisticated. It is designed to render sophistication meaningless. They do not charge because they are too stupid to do anything else. They charge because they understand that the most complex tactical plan in the universe cannot account for someone who simply refuses to stop." He turned to face us fully now. "That human cadet just defeated one of the finest combat instructors in this academy. Not through superior tactics, not through better training, but by forcing instructor Thrace to fight a battle that tactics could not solve. By being, as she herself stated, not someone who uses tactics, but someone who is themselves a tactic." The observation deck remained silent. Vok looked around at all of us. Students of 24 species, all staring at him, waiting. "I owe Cadet Tanaka an apology. I owe all 3 of our human cadets an apology. And I owe this institution a reassessment of how we teach tactical doctrine. Class is dismissed. Actually dismissed this time." We filed out slowly. Nobody spoke. What was there to say? We had just watched our fundamental understanding of tactical combat get turned inside out by someone who solved the problem by pretending the problem did not exist. I found Kira outside the simulation chamber. Marcus and Diego were with her, both looking stunned. She was drinking water from a standard academy bottle, looking no more concerned than if she had just finished a light workout. "Kira," I said, all 4 of my arms gesturing in what I hoped conveyed the appropriate level of amazed confusion. That was... I do not have words. It was simple, Reth. Thrace is better than me at everything. Faster, stronger, more experienced, better training. So I made all of that irrelevant. By walking toward her. By walking toward her, she confirmed. Humans learned a long time ago that sometimes the best tactic is to make the other side overthink their tactics. Marcus shook his head. That was the most reckless thing I have ever seen. If Thrace had landed even one solid hit. But she did not, Kira said simply, because she was too busy trying to land the perfect hit, too busy calculating the optimal tactical response, too busy being better than me to notice that being better did not matter. Diego was grinning. Huge, genuine grin. General Vox's face when you headbutted Thrace. I am going to remember that forever. That was improvised, Kira admitted. I had planned to grab her arms and try to throw her off balance, but she was braced for that, so I did something she was not braced for. You headbutted a Vrethian combat instructor. I did. My forehead hurts, but it worked. We walked back toward the dormitories together. The sun, or what passed for it on Thandros Prime, was setting. The sky was turning that peculiar shade of purple-green that still looked alien to me even after 2 cycles at the academy. Reth, Kira said as we walked, can I ask you something? Of course. In your notes, you write down everything you observe about humans, correct? I felt my spine ridges flush again. I apologize if that is intrusive. I am simply trying to understand. It is fine. I am not offended, but I am curious. After today, what are you going to write? I thought about it, considered my observations, the fight, the lecture, that small, dangerous smile. I am going to write that humans are not predictable because they charge. Humans are predictable because we expect them to think about charging the same way we would think about charging. And they do not. They think about it like a tool, like a tactical option that happens to look like mindless aggression. And that difference, that gap between what it looks like and what it actually is, that is what makes them dangerous. Kira nodded slowly. That is probably the most accurate thing anyone has ever said about human tactics. We look stupid. We act aggressively. We charge at things that should kill us. And while everyone is busy being confused by that, we are already inside their decision loop, making all their careful planning meaningless. We reached the dormitory complex, said our goodbyes, headed to our respective quarters. That night, I made a new entry in my journal. Quote, Today, a human defeated a Vrethian combat instructor by walking forward. Tomorrow, I will attend General Vox's lecture. I expect it will be different. I still do not understand humans, but I am beginning to understand why they survive. End quote. The next day, General Vox opened his lecture with a formal apology to Kira, Marcus, and Diego. Then he spent the next 2 hours analyzing the simulation in detail, explaining how Kira had identified Thrace's tactical framework, recognized that engaging with it would guarantee her defeat, and instead chosen to force an engagement type where tactical sophistication was a liability rather than an asset. It was, he admitted, a masterclass in asymmetric warfare, in turning weakness into strength by redefining what strength meant. And as I sat there taking notes with all 4 hands, watching my classmates from 24 species all reassess their understanding of human military doctrine, I realized something important. Humans were not just survivors. They were not just aggressive. They were problem solvers who had learned that sometimes the best way to solve a problem was to change the problem itself. Also, never ever assume a human is doing something stupid just because it looks stupid. That is how they get you.